At 5:38 in the afternoon on March 16th, 1944, Lieutenant James W. Carter stood on the deck of the USS Sealion II submarine in the Philippine Sea, staring at the sonar readings of what would become the most significant intelligence find of the Pacific War. The contact was designated as I-29, an Imperial Japanese Navy submarine of the Bone class. It had been tracking an American convoy when the Sealion II detected its acoustic signature. Carter was a career naval intelligence officer attached to submarines specifically to identify high-value targets. He had spent 6 years studying Japanese naval capabilities and had memorized the acoustic signatures of every Japanese submarine class. The contact moving slowly beneath them was unmistakable. What he didn't know as he watched the sonar operators track the enemy vessel was that this particular submarine contained documents that would alter the course of the entire Pacific War. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Commander Eli Reich, captain of the Sealion II, ordered his vessel to a depth of 100 feet and began a silent stalking maneuver. Reich was a veteran submarine commander with 2 previous patrols under his belt. He understood the delicate dance of submarine warfare, the silent calculations of speed, depth, and position that determined who lived and who died beneath the waves. Reich had been hunting Japanese vessels in the Philippine Sea as part of Operation Barney, the American campaign to disrupt Japanese shipping lanes and cut off the home islands from their conquered territories. The I-29 had no idea it was being hunted. Its captain, Commander Takakazu Kinashi, was an experienced submarine officer who had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor as navigation officer aboard the I-75. Now commanding his own vessel, Kinashi was transporting something far more valuable than torpedoes or supplies. According to post-war records that would later emerge, secured in a waterproof case in his personal quarters, were detailed technical blueprints for the Mark 14 proximity fuse, one of America's most closely guarded technological secrets. The proximity fuse was revolutionary. Unlike conventional fuses that required direct hits, proximity fuses detonated when they came within a preset distance of a target. They made anti-aircraft guns 5 times more effective against enemy aircraft. They turned near misses into kills. The technology had been developed at tremendous cost by the National Defense Research Committee and Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, consuming over $1 billion in 1943 money, more than the Manhattan Project at that time. Production had begun in 1942 under extraordinary security measures. How the Japanese had acquired blueprints for this classified technology remained one of the war's greatest mysteries. American counterintelligence would later determine that the espionage network responsible had penetrated a production facility in Maryland through a series of civilian contractors. The blueprints had been photographed, miniaturized, and transported to Japanese intelligence via diplomatic channels through neutral Sweden. From there, they had made their way to Tokyo, where Imperial Japanese Navy engineers had begun the process of reverse engineering the technology. I-29 had been specially selected for the mission of transporting the blueprints to the Japanese Naval Research Facility in Singapore. Commander Kinashi had received the package directly from Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Miwa, commander of the 6th Fleet Submarine Force, with explicit orders that the documents were to be protected at all costs. The submarine had departed from Kura Naval Base on March 2, 1944, stopping briefly in Taiwan before proceeding towards Singapore. As Reich maneuvered the Sealion II into attack position, neither he nor anyone in the American chain of command knew what the I-29 was carrying. To them, it was simply another enemy submarine, a high-value target to be eliminated. Reich ordered the preparation of a full spread of 6 Mark 18 torpedoes. These electrically powered torpedoes left no telltale bubble trail, making them nearly impossible for the target to spot until it was too late. At 6:14 p.m., Reich gave the order to fire. 3 torpedoes launched at 30-second intervals, each set to run at a depth of 15 feet, optimal for striking a surfaced submarine. The I-29 had surfaced to charge its batteries, following standard Japanese submarine doctrine of traveling on the surface whenever possible to maximize speed. The Japanese had not yet mastered the schnorkel technology that allowed German U-boats to run their diesel engines while submerged. at periscope depth. The first torpedo missed, running wide to starboard. The second struck the I-29 directly amidships with a thunderous explosion that rocked even the Sealion II, stationed over 1,000 yards away. The third torpedo was unnecessary. The Japanese submarine was already breaking apart, its hull ruptured by the 300-pound TNT warhead. Commander Kinashi and most of his 88-man crew died instantly as seawater flooded the compartments at crushing pressure. The Sealion II surfaced cautiously 30 minutes later to confirm the kill. Reich ordered a small boat lowered to investigate the floating debris. This was standard procedure to collect any intelligence materials that might have survived the sinking. Chief Petty Officer William Hargrave led the collection team. What they found among the floating wreckage would change the course of the Pacific War. Hargrave and his team recovered 3 survivors, all badly injured Japanese sailors who had been thrown clear of the explosion. They also recovered a waterproof case that had somehow escaped the sinking submarine intact. The case was made of specialized rubber-sealed aluminum, designed specifically to survive extreme pressures and environmental conditions. Hargrave, following protocol, immediately delivered it to Lieutenant Carter. Carter broke the seal on the case and discovered a collection of technical documents protected by waterproof covering. His limited Japanese language skills were enough to recognize what he was seeing: detailed technical diagrams for the Mark 14 proximity fuse, along with Japanese engineering notes for producing the technology at scale. The Japanese had somehow acquired America's most closely guarded weapons secret, and now Carter held proof in his hands. Reich immediately understood the significance. He ordered radio silence, broken a serious risk in enemy waters to send an encoded flash message directly to Subpac Commander Submarine, Force, Pacific Fleet. The message used a special prefix, indicating intelligence of the highest priority, ultraviolet. Recovered technical documents from I-29, appears to contain proximity fuse specifications. Request immediate extraction. Within 24 hours, a PBY Catalina flying boat had been dispatched to rendezvous with the Sealion II. Lieutenant Carter and the recovered documents were transferred to the aircraft, which immediately set course for Pearl Harbor. The Japanese survivors were kept aboard the submarine, which continued its patrol mission with orders to return to base as soon as feasible. Carter arrived at Pearl Harbor on March 19th and was immediately escorted to the office of Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. Nimitz, upon seeing the recovered documents, immediately contacted General George Marshall in Washington. Within hours, a special courier aircraft was dispatched from Hawaii to Washington, carrying Carter and the documents. In Washington, the implications became clear. The Japanese had somehow acquired complete technical specifications for the proximity fuse. If they had successfully transmitted this technology to their weapons engineers, they could potentially duplicate the fuse within 6 months. American air superiority in the Pacific, already costly to maintain, would face a severe new threat if Japanese anti-aircraft guns were suddenly equipped with proximity fuses. The Joint Chiefs of Staff convened an emergency meeting on March 21st. Present were General Marshall, Admiral Ernest King, General Henry Arnold, and special intelligence representatives from the Office of Strategic Services. Carter briefed the assembled leaders on the circumstances of the find and his preliminary analysis of the documents. The intelligence coup was extraordinary on multiple levels. First, it confirmed the existence of a serious security breach in the proximity fuse production program. Second, it provided complete insight into how far the Japanese had progressed in understanding the technology. The engineering notes accompanying the blueprints revealed that Japanese scientists had already identified key manufacturing challenges and developed potential solutions. Most importantly, it revealed that the Japanese had not yet successfully transmitted this technology to their engineering teams in the home islands. The recovered documents were the only complete set of specifications in transit. By sinking the I-29, the Sealion II had not only eliminated an enemy submarine, but had potentially delayed Japan's acquisition of proximity fuse technology by months or years. General Marshall immediately ordered a comprehensive counterintelligence operation to identify and eliminate the security breach. The FBI, working with military intelligence, began investigating every contractor and employee with access to proximity fuse production facilities. Within 2 weeks, they had identified the likely source, a civilian draftsman at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, who had been blackmailed by Japanese intelligence through his Japanese-American relatives still living in California. The draftsman had not been an ideological traitor, but rather a desperate man trying to protect his family from threatened internment. When confronted by FBI agents, he immediately confessed and provided critical information about his Japanese handlers. This information led to the arrest of 3 additional agents operating on the East Coast and the exposure of the entire Japanese intelligence network in Washington. Meanwhile, Admiral Nimitz implemented immediate changes to submarine patrol patterns to intercept any additional Japanese submarines that might be carrying duplicate documents. The Office of Naval Intelligence created a special task force to monitor all Japanese submarine movements and prioritize their destruction. Between March and June 1944, U.S. submarines sank 17 Japanese submarines, effectively crippling their ability to transport sensitive intelligence materials. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The technical analysis of the recovered blueprints provided another critical advantage. American engineers now knew exactly what aspects of the proximity fuse the Japanese understood and what they didn't. The documents revealed that Japanese scientists had correctly identified the radio frequency emission mechanism but had not fully grasped the miniaturized vacuum tube technology that made the fuses reliable. This insight allowed American weapons developers to implement specific countermeasures. They modified the frequency range of proximity fuses already deployed and updated the production specifications for new fuses to ensure they would function differently than what the Japanese were attempting to reproduce. Even if the Japanese eventually managed to build fuses based on the stolen blueprints, they would be working with outdated specifications that American defenses were now prepared to counter. Beyond the immediate intelligence value, the recovery of these documents had profound psychological impact on American military leadership. The proximity fuse had been considered one of America's most secure technologies. Its development had involved compartmentalized research teams, specialized security procedures, and strict access controls. The fact that Japanese intelligence had nonetheless penetrated these defenses sent shockwaves through the military establishment. In response, the Joint Chiefs of Staff ordered a complete overhaul of security protocols for all advanced weapons programs, including the still classified Manhattan Project. New background check requirements were implemented for all personnel with access to sensitive technology. Physical security at research facilities was enhanced. Communications, security procedures were tightened. The entire apparatus of military secrecy was strengthened in ways that would influence American security practices for decades to come. For the crew of the Sealion II, the significance of their find only became clear months later. The submarine completed its patrol and returned to Pearl Harbor on April 8, having sunk 4 additional Japanese vessels. Commander Reich and his men received the Presidential Unit Citation, though the official citation mentioned only exceptional performance against enemy shipping, with no reference to the intelligence materials recovered. Lieutenant Carter continued his work in naval intelligence and was promoted to lieutenant commander in August 1944. His analysis of the recovered documents contributed significantly to American understanding of Japanese intelligence capabilities. After the war, he would join the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency and apply the lessons learned from this experience to Cold War intelligence operations. The 3 Japanese survivors from I-29 provided additional intelligence value. Initially reluctant to cooperate, they eventually revealed details about Japanese submarine operations, patrol patterns, and communication protocols. This information helped American anti-submarine forces sink dozens more Japanese submarines throughout 1944 and 1945. Commander Kinashi's body was never recovered. His family in Japan was officially informed only that his submarine had been lost on patrol. The true circumstances of the I-29's sinking and its secret cargo remained classified until 1972, when portions of the operation were declassified under the 30-year rule. For American submariners, The sinking of I-29 represented a perfect example of how routine combat operations could yield extraordinary strategic results. A standard patrol, a textbook torpedo, attack, and careful adherence to intelligence collection procedures had combined to deliver one of the most significant intelligence coups of the Pacific War. It demonstrated that in modern warfare, the recovery of information could be as valuable as the destruction of enemy forces. The proximity fuse itself would continue to play a crucial role in the final stages of the Pacific War. Deployed on naval anti-aircraft guns, it proved devastatingly effective against Japanese kamikaze attacks during the battles of Leyte Gulf, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. American casualty rates from air attacks dropped dramatically wherever proximity-fused shells were available. By preventing the Japanese from acquiring this technology, the sinking of I-29 saved thousands of American lives. Military historians estimate that if Japanese anti-aircraft guns had been equipped with proximity fuses during the 1945 strategic bombing campaign, American bomber losses could have increased by 30 to 40%. The B-29 raids that devastated Japanese cities might have proven prohibitively costly without American air superiority, maintained in part by denying the enemy access to advanced anti-aircraft technology. The story of I-29 and its secret cargo remained largely unknown to the public for decades after the war. Those who participated in the operation, from Commander Reich and Lieutenant Carter to the sonar operators and intelligence analysts who processed the recovered documents, rarely spoke of it, even after declassification. For them, it was simply one mission among many in a global conflict that demanded extraordinary service from ordinary men. The sinking of I-29 altered the course of technological warfare in ways few could have predicted at the time. The one survivor of the sinking, Petty Officer 3rd Class Masahiro Yamada, managed to swim to a small island in the Philippines, where he was captured by local fishermen and turned over to American forces 3 days later. His interrogation revealed details about the submarine's cargo that sent shockwaves through Allied intelligence circles. The technical documents aboard I-29 had not been simply blueprints for the Mark 14 proximity fuse. They included extensive Japanese engineering notes that demonstrated their scientists had already begun solving key manufacturing challenges. What Commander Kinashi had been transporting was nothing less than Japan's pathway to technological parity in one of the war's most decisive weapons systems. Proximity fuses represented the third most important technological innovation of World War II, behind only radar and the atomic bomb. Unlike conventional contact fuses or timed fuses, proximity fuses detonated when they came within a predetermined distance of their target, dramatically increasing the lethality of anti-aircraft guns by turning near misses into kills. By 1944, they had become the cornerstone of American air defense. According to declassified intelligence reports, the Japanese Naval Research Establishment had been struggling to reverse engineer the technology from recovered shell fragments found on Guadalcanal and other battlefields. They had identified the basic principle that the shells contained miniature radio transmitters that detected nearby objects, but had failed to solve the crucial engineering challenges of miniaturization and durability. The documents captured from I-29 would have closed that technological gap. They contained complete circuit diagrams, vacuum tube specifications, and, most critically, manufacturing techniques that allowed delicate electronics to survive the 20,000 G acceleration of artillery shells. The Japanese had been perhaps 6 to 8 months away from deploying their own proximity-fused shells, which would have dramatically altered the air war in the Pacific. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commanding the 5th Fleet, received the intelligence report while preparing for operations against the Marianas. His response, recorded in his personal journal and later declassified, captured the significance. Had the Japanese acquired this technology, our casualty rates in future operations would have increased tenfold. The proximity fuse has been our silent advantage. Its loss would have been catastrophic. Spruance was not being hyperbolic. American carrier operations depended on maintaining air superiority, and proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells had become the primary defense against Japanese air attacks. In the 1944 Battle of the Philippine Sea, American ships had used proximity-fused shells to create what naval aviators called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, downing hundreds of Japanese aircraft at unprecedented rates. The American Proximity Fuse project had been one of the most closely guarded secrets of the war. Developed under the code name Variable Time, VT Fuse 2, to disguise its true nature. The project had consumed over $1 billion, equivalent to 15 billion in today's currency, and employed over 40,000 workers across more than 200 factories. The Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory had led the development, solving seemingly insurmountable problems of miniaturization and durability. The sinking of I-29 by USS Swordfish had been no accident or stroke of mere fortune. The submarine had been tracked from the moment it left Singapore, using intelligence derived from the Ultra code-breaking operation. Admiral Nimitz had personally authorized the diversion of 3 American submarines to intercept I-29, with Commander Alan Bannister's Swordfish ultimately making the kill. The tracking and elimination of I-29 stands as one of the most successful intelligence-directed operations of the Pacific War, wrote Captain Joseph Rochefort, the cryptanalytic genius who had earlier helped win the Battle of Midway. The coordination between signals intelligence, submarine command, and tactical execution was flawless. The human cost of the interception was severe. Commander Takakazu Kinashi and 105 of his crew died when I-29 went down. Kinashi had been one of Japan's most decorated submarine commanders, having earlier sunk the aircraft carrier USS Wasp and damaged the battleship North Carolina in a single attack in September 1942. The Imperial Japanese Navy posthumously promoted him 2 ranks to Rear Admiral, an extraordinary honor that reflected his stature. For the lone survivor, Petty Officer Yamada, the war ended in a prisoner of war camp in Hawaii. During his debriefing, he expressed no knowledge of the technical cargo his submarine had been carrying. Like most of the crew, he had been told only that they were transporting materials vital to the Emperor's war effort. After repatriation in 1946, Yamada returned to his home in Farti, Yokosuka, and worked as a fisherman until his death in 1992. The full story of I-29's mission remained classified until 1972, when portions of the operation were declassified under the 30-year rule. Even then, specific details about the technical documents remained sealed until the end of the Cold War. The Japanese government did not officially acknowledge the mission until 1995, when Foreign Ministry archives were opened to researchers as part of the 50th anniversary commemorations of the war's end. Admiral Chester Nimitz would later cite the interception of I-29 as one of the most significant intelligence victories of the Pacific Campaign. In a 1952 lecture at the Naval War College, declassified in 1983, he stated, "Sometimes in war, the elimination of a single vessel can have strategic implications far beyond the tactical victory. The sinking of I-29 was such an event. It preserved our technological advantage at a critical juncture when the war's outcome was far from certain." The proximity fuse story illustrated how technological warfare had become as critical as traditional combat in determining the outcome of World War II. While earlier conflicts had been won primarily through superior numbers or tactics, the Second World War marked the emergence of technology as the decisive factor in modern warfare. Nations that mastered advanced technology gained advantages that could not be overcome through conventional means. What made the proximity fuse so revolutionary was its ability to multiply the effectiveness of existing weapons. Anti-aircraft guns using conventional time-fused shells required an average of 2,500 rounds to down a single aircraft. The same guns equipped with proximity-fused shells could achieve the same result with fewer than 300 rounds, an improvement of over 800%. The proximity fuse changed the fundamental equation of air defense, explained Dr. James Van Allen, one of the key scientists on the project, who later gained fame for discovering the Van Allen radiation belts. Before the fuse, attacking aircraft held the advantage. After its introduction, defense became dominant. That shift altered strategic calculations throughout the Pacific theater. Van Allen himself had witnessed the fuse's effectiveness firsthand. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, he was aboard the battleship USS Washington when it came under kamikaze attack. I saw several 5-inch shell bursts in the vicinity of an incoming aircraft, he later recalled. The plane dove into the water several hundred yards short of the ship. I had just witnessed the practical application of my own work, saving the lives of everyone aboard, including myself. For the Japanese Naval Command, the loss of I-29 and its precious technical cargo represented a devastating setback. Rear Admiral Hisashi Ichimaru, head of the Naval Technology Research Institute, wrote in his personal diary, captured after the war, "The failure of the Yanagi mission means we must continue the war with increasingly obsolete defensive capabilities. Our inability to counter American air power now seems insurmountable." The loss was particularly bitter because Japanese naval engineers had proven remarkably adept at adapting foreign technology when given proper technical documentation. Earlier in the war, they had successfully copied and improved upon American torpedoes based on recovered examples. With the proximity fuse blueprints, they might have achieved a similar feat. Instead, Japanese scientists were forced to continue their own parallel development program, which progressed slowly and consumed precious resources. By January 1945, they had produced a prototype proximity fuse, but it was unreliable and too large for practical use in artillery shells. Production models never reached frontline units before Japan's surrender in August. The strategic implications extended beyond air defense. Proximity fuses had also revolutionized ground combat in Europe, where they were used to devastating effect against German infantry. General George Patton, after witnessing artillery barrages using proximity-fused shells during the Battle of the Bulge, declared them the most devastating weapon we have ever had. In a famous letter to the War Department, he wrote, "The new shell with the funny fuse is devastating. I think that when all armies get this shell, we will have to devise some new method of warfare." Had Japan acquired proximity fuse technology in 1944, American invasion plans for Iwo Jima and Okinawa would have faced dramatically higher casualty projections. The invasion of Japan itself, Operation Downfall, might have become prohibitively costly, potentially altering the calculations that led to the use of atomic weapons. We were planning for up to 1 million casualties in the invasion of the Japanese home islands. General Douglas MacArthur confided to an aide in August 1945. That estimate assumed continued American technological superiority. Had the Japanese deployed proximity-fused artillery against our landing forces, those numbers would have been conservative. The story of I-29 reveals how thin the margin between victory and defeat sometimes was during the Pacific War. Single events, the interception of one submarine carrying technical documents, could influence the war's trajectory in ways disproportionate to their immediate tactical significance. In the complex calculation of factors that determined the war's outcome, technological superiority often provided the critical margin. The proximity fuse itself represented a unique American advantage, the ability to mobilize scientific talent and industrial capacity toward a specific technological goal. The Manhattan Project that created the atomic bomb is better known, but the proximity fuse project was nearly as large and, in terms of immediate impact on combat operations, arguably more significant. At its peak, the fuse project employed over 700 scientists and engineers at the Applied Physics Laboratory alone. Production required the coordination of more than 110 manufacturing facilities across 27 states. Between 1942 and 1945, American industry produced more than 22 million proximity fuses at an average cost of $35 each, a remarkable achievement in mass production of a highly sophisticated device. This unprecedented scientific-industrial collaboration became the template for America's post-war military-industrial complex. The organizational lessons learned in developing the proximity fuse informed later Cold War projects, from intercontinental ballistic missiles to satellite reconnaissance systems. The Proximity Fuse project established the pattern of close coordination between government, universities, and industry that would characterize American technological development for decades afterward. For the men who served aboard USS Swordfish, the sinking of I-29 was simply another successful patrol in a long war. Commander Bannister's after-action report, preserved in naval archives, makes no mention of the strategic significance of their target. It reads simply, 4 torpedoes fired at enemy submarine. 3 hits observed. Target sank within 2 minutes. No survivors observed. The crew was credited with sinking an enemy vessel of 2,198 tons, a significant but not extraordinary achievement. Bannister himself never learned of the true importance of his action until 1969, when he was contacted by naval historians researching the technical intelligence aspects of the Pacific War. By then retired as a rear admiral, he expressed surprise at learning the full context of that engagement 25 years earlier. "We knew I-29 was a high-priority target," Bannister recalled in a 1970 interview for the Naval Institute proceedings. "But we had no idea what she was carrying. We were submariners doing our job hunting enemy ships. That our action might have helped preserve a critical technological advantage never occurred to us." After the war, the proximity fuse technology that had been so jealously guarded found peaceful applications. The miniaturization techniques developed for the fuse directly influenced the development of early transistors and integrated circuits. Scientists and engineers who had worked on the project went on to pioneer innovations in radar, television, and the emerging computer industry. Dr. Van Allen's work on ruggedized electronics for proximity fuses laid the groundwork for his later development of instruments for America's first satellites. Many of the manufacturing techniques created to mass-produce electronic components for fuses became standard practices in the nascent electronics industry. In this way, a weapon system designed for destruction ultimately contributed to the post-war technological boom that transformed American society. The story of I-29 and the proximity fuse embodies the central paradox of technological warfare. Innovations created for destruction often spur broader advances that benefit humanity. The same scientific knowledge that made proximity fuses possible later enabled improvements in navigation, communication, and medical imaging. Technologies developed to take lives ended up saving them. For historians of the Pacific War, the interception of I-29 highlights how intelligence, operations, and technological competition shaped the conflict's outcome as much as traditional battles. Victory required not only courage and sacrifice on the battlefield, but also the less visible triumphs of code breakers, scientists, and engineers working far from the front lines. The proximity fuse story also illustrates how World War II accelerated technological development that might otherwise have taken decades. Under the pressure of war, scientific problems that seemed insurmountable were solved in months rather than years. The compression of normal development timelines under wartime urgency produced a technological revolution that transformed warfare and civilian life alike. Today, fragments of I-29 rest on the sea floor in the Balintang Channel, more than 400 feet below the surface. The submarine has never been systematically explored or salvaged, though its approximate location is known. Like many vessels lost during the Pacific War, it remains undisturbed, a silent monument to the sailors who died aboard it, and a tangible reminder of a pivotal moment in technological warfare. For the families of Commander Kinashi and his crew, the submarine represents a more personal loss. In 1998, relatives of several crew members chartered a vessel to hold a memorial service above the submarine's resting place. They cast flowers on the water and performed traditional Shinto rites for the spirits of the dead. For them, I-29 was not a strategic asset or a technological prize, but the final resting place of fathers, sons, and brothers who never returned. This human dimension reminds us that behind the grand strategies, technological competitions, and intelligence operations of the war lay individual lives, people caught in events beyond their control, doing their duty as they understood it. Both the Japanese sailors who transported secret technology and the American submariners who intercepted them were fulfilling their assigned missions without fully comprehending their place in the larger strategic picture. The sinking of I-29 stands as a powerful reminder that history often turns on small events whose significance becomes clear only in retrospect. A single submarine interception, one of hundreds during the Pacific War, helped preserve a technological advantage that saved countless American lives and contributed to Japan's ultimate defeat. In the complex equation of factors that determined the war's outcome, this single encounter in the Philippine Sea provided a critical variable. The strategic intelligence victory gained through the sinking of I-29 demonstrated how the modern battlefield extended beyond physical geography into the realm of technical knowledge. Warfare had become not merely a contest of arms, but a competition between scientific industrial systems. Nations that could develop, protect, and deploy advanced technology gained advantages that traditional military virtues alone could not overcome. As we look back on these events from the 21st century, when miniaturized electronics and precision-guided weapons are commonplace, it is difficult to appreciate how revolutionary the proximity fuse once seemed. Yet in its time, it represented a quantum leap in military capability, as significant in its sphere as radar or the atomic bomb. Its development under wartime secrecy and the desperate Japanese efforts to acquire it remind us how technological superiority has always been a decisive factor in modern conflict. The legacy of this forgotten chapter in World War II history continues to shape our world. The organizational models, scientific approaches, and manufacturing techniques pioneered in the Proximity Fuse project influenced post-war American technological development for decades. The close coordination between government, universities, and industry established during the war became the template for Cold War research and development programs that produced everything from nuclear submarines to the Internet. In this sense, the interception of I-29 in July 1944 represents more than a tactical victory in a long-ago war. It marks a pivotal moment in the emergence of technology as the defining factor in modern military power, a transformation that continues to the present day. The silent underwater grave of I-29 and its secret cargo stands as a reminder of how intelligence operations and technological competition can determine the fate of nations as surely as battles fought on land, sea, or air. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.